Okay, hi everyone. So my name is Jigyasa and I work for the international relations team at TC Global. And right now we have Nikita with us, but we also have Priya joining us from Health Go. So we're just going to wait for her and probably do her, bio later. But in the meantime, I'm going to start with like the most basic question so that we can get a conversation started, which is, what do you think sustainability means, and like what does it mean to you actually? Oh, great, we have Priya already. Let me just introduce her as well then first. Hi, Priya.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, awesome. I'm great. So my name is Jigyasa. We haven't had a chance to meet, so I'm going to introduce myself to the audience and you at the same time. I work for the international relations team. I'm going to be a host today. On the panel today, we have Nikita, who's the founder of Sarom Living and Home. And it is basically a sustainable brand. And obviously, as the conversation continues, we'll know a little bit more. And Priya, on the other hand, is the healthcare entrepreneur and founder of Go. Again, I think we're going to hear a lot from both of you, so I'll let it come from you guys after this. But my first question, which is the most basic that we want to talk about, is what does sustainability mean to both of you, like in your own spaces? Because I know it can be quite diverse and a little bit confusing as well for some people these days. So, Nikita, if you want to start.
Sure. So sustainability it's a very vague term. I feel like, and it's very subjective depending on which part of the world you're from, because there's a lot of socioeconomic factors that play into it as well. So to me, according to how my business is set up, from the get-go, sustainability meant, well, obviously the environment is a huge aspect of it, but also the communities, like the people that are associated with me, and low income background workers, and uplifting the community in general. And
Yeah.
also, from a business perspective, being able to sustain the business is also a part of sustainability. So it's basically, for me, it's like conscious consumerism, it's ethical treatment of workers, and basically making conscious choices about whatever you purchase, whatever you do, and whatever you choose to include in your life. Being mindful of that is sustainability in a nutshell for me.
That's very interesting, actually. Yeah. Priya?
I think for me, sustainability also has a lot to do with what Nikita said. I think there's sustainability at a personal level, and then there's
Yeah.
sustainability at an ecosystem level. So, at a personal level, I feel like a lot of us are now becoming very conscious of what sustainability means. And that is something that has become a part of the larger consciousness of people, in terms of the fact that they expect that now from companies, they expect that now from businesses. They want to see sustainability incorporated in various aspects. And of course, sustainability in the ecosystem means that, not only brands, big companies, governments moving towards a more sustainable way of functioning, not only I would say tokenism in sustainability, but also really embodying it right, right from the supply chain. So right from how you manufacture, produce things, all the way to the consumer end, I feel like that is where the ecosystem is starting to become more sustainable.
Yeah.
And with the sustainable development goals coming in, the fact that they're called SDGs is also putting sustainability at the center stage. So I think now it's a time where we've all heard in the media as well, it's the red alert time for humanity when it comes to climate change. And I think it's something that if we don't focus on this in the next 10 years, there are a lot of things that are in question for the human race as such, right? So
Yes.
I mean, this is what I would say sustainability means.
Yeah. No, I love that both of you, actually go down to the fact that it has to start from any stage of the business to the consumer.
Yeah.
It's not just that we're putting up a facade of, like, earlier there was this thing that, the company could be doing anything, they're not accountable, and then they just have this one portion which is just like, okay, but now people are asking questions and actually holding them accountable, which is awesome. So, and you guys as entrepreneurs, you're like taking care of that from the other end, which is so cool. So what would you say, what would green jobs or sustainability, since we're talking about careers, what would that actually mean, like having a green job or a sustainability related job? What would that even mean?
Uh, okay.
Any of
So
you?
There's the traditional green jobs that if you Google, the first thing that are going to come up are like working in the renewable energy sector or working in, I don't know, like fashion has become a big thing now when it comes to sustainability. I am at a pop up right now, actually. But yeah, so besides that, I feel like green jobs are, they are available in every single field, whether it's finance, whether it's waste management, any sort of manufacturing, any sort of construction business. It basically means that, like Priya said from the get-go, sustainability is a spectrum, right? And wherever like you fall on that spectrum, let's say it's in investments, you're managing like a portfolio of a high investment individual. You can choose the companies whose policies you.
Oh, she's stuck. Is she stuck for me or for you as well?
Well,
Okay, so we're just gonna have to get back to her. So,
so should
what
I?
is your? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, I think she's back. You're back,
Okay, because
Nikita.
I got stuck.
Sorry,
Sorry.
You're back. You're
excuse
back.
me. Uh, yeah, so um, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so let's say like that investment. So green jobs is essentially where you choose to not only put your money, but also like what you decide to imbibe in your, for the consumers, and what decisions you're making for them. And waste management is a huge field that's coming up when it comes to green jobs. So that's the biggest problem in India. You're not managing waste correctly, you're not managing resources correctly. I know more about textile waste, so if I give an example of that, there are so many companies that are coming up that work on an upcycle business model. So that's
Yeah.
waste management, and it's there for any kind of field. So yeah, green jobs, I feel like it's a
So
vague
it's not
answer.
just limited to the stuff that we've known. Like
Not at all.
before, we used to say, "Oh, it's a green job," and the only thing you think about is like somebody working in the renewable energy space, and that's it. But
Yeah.
now it's kind of diverse, and it kind of flows into every single theme. So, what about you, Priya? What do you think?
To Nikita, I feel like there's this whole concept of ESG that's come up, right? And a lot of people are investing in companies who have a high ESG score in the sense that they are sustainable at every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
according to me, if you look at the jobs right now and the jobs of the future, any job in supply chain or any job in the policy space or any of these fields, you will have to know about sustainability and bringing that in, because there's so much scrutiny now,
Yeah.
even with global brands, right? Every global brand, and take an example of fashion, fast fashion and clothes and everything, they're coming under a lot of scrutiny, and many companies have been declaring that they are going to change
Change in
things by
2020. Yeah.
2025, and they're sort of making certain goals now which were never there, and that's because of consumer pressure. So I would say
Right.
that knowledge of sustainability should definitely be there. I mean, if you're a student, you should definitely have that going into any job, either in R&D of of a global organization, even in packaging, even in supply chain, like I said. So all of these will become green jobs.
Yeah.
Simply, I mean, there's no distinction in my mind, because now everything is going towards sustainability. And if you're on the face of it doing something that's unsustainable, it's no longer looked at favorably. You can't get away with it anymore. There was a
That's true.
time you could, but now you can't. So I think because of all that scrutiny, it's very important for people applying for jobs or who are going to want to go into this field, is that they should have that knowledge, because every job will require that knowledge.
And just to
Sure.
sort of add to that, I was reading that there will be about like 25 million jobs added in the green sector by 2050. And
Yeah.
so even like companies are preferring somebody, like let's say one individual is interested in packaging, like Priya gave an example. If you
Hmm.
know a lot about sustainable packaging, but you have, let's say, a college degree from not an Ivy League, you still have a higher chance of getting hired at the company of your choice if you know
Yeah.
in depth, if you know the knowledge of how the manufacturing is going to work, what innovative materials you can use, and how you can optimize it for the company.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, they look at you as a return on investment, right? So if you can add knowledge, optimize it for them, and get consumers attracted, that's all a company is really looking for.
Agree.
Awesome. So I'm just going to add to this actually that since most of these careers are going to turn green, or there are going to be too many jobs added into this, does that also mean that before, when people would just go and study sustainability or renewable energy as a subject, do you think it will slowly be the other way around, where it's getting integrated into every single curriculum that exists? Is that something that is happening? And if yes, how would, like, does that work?
Um,
I can just start off with one thing. In school, you have the subject environmental science,
Yeah.
and I think we started having that subject sort of a bit later on. I remember when I was in school, the EVS was like a, sort of a sidey subject that nobody
Yeah.
really paid that much attention to, and you did it for marks or whatever it was. I'm
Yeah.
sure all of us remember that. But now I think EVS and other subjects like this have gained a lot more importance even in the education system.
Right.
And now, what I see is that a lot of college degrees also specialize in this field. So, like what Nikita was saying, when more jobs are added to the sustainability sector, there has to be a match in the college education side as well.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
definitely it will come, because in the end, after college education, you want to be employable somewhere. And if there has to be a match between the education as well as the available opportunities, so people will want to take those careers. I've seen so many young people today actually say that, I mean, they're studying subjects that when I was in school, there weren't even options to study those subjects, or there were
Yeah.
very little options to study those subjects.
Yeah.
Now it's all over the place. Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
so many, a lot of European colleges, they offer master's degrees in sustainability management, in supply chain optimization, etc.
Right.
So yeah, they are, I think, being integrated in the curriculum, and it's not fluff anymore. You need to know
Yeah.
about it. You need to, yeah, like
Yeah.
Priya said, you can't just EPS your way through life.
Right.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, cool. So the next question is, so what challenge is sustainability actually trying to address? Like, what is it that we actually, is it just the environment, or is it something beyond
uh, so
that?
I feel
Differentiate.
like over the course of, I know I'm just really young, but over the course of humanity and how civilization has progressed, everything is being taken for granted.
Yeah.
So I think it's from like where I'm coming from, or the way that I've kind of read about it. Sustainability is just being aware of the choices you make and the consequences they're going to have. Like tomorrow, let's say being vegan and being vegetarian is a huge, huge topic now, and the greenhouse emissions that meat products have. Let's say you are somebody who does eat meat and you own your choice. I eat meat, I contribute to the greenhouse gas effect. That's fine, that's on you. Sustainability is basically being aware of the impact your choices have on the planet, and just kind of, I don't know, knowing more about the choices you make when it comes to being a consumer, when it comes to being a civilian of whatever country you're living in. So
Yeah.
yeah. So it works on all scales, not just the environment, even the people. Like if you're hiring people and they're not even able to make a living wage, then that's exploitation. So any sort of exploitation is what sustainability would try to address, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Sustainability traditionally is definitely meant for the planet and climate change, and obviously that is very, very important because it addresses a lot of spheres. So, is it beyond climate change? Of course, 90% of the conversation is around climate change, but it so turns out that making sustainable choices is actually good for your health as well, and that
Yeah.
is something that like it's at a personal level actually good for you to be more sustainable. For example, I'll give an example like what Nikita was saying about the meat and dairy industry. Also, if you consume highly processed foods, right, any packaged foods, etc., they are responsible for more greenhouse gas emissions than natural foods. Right now,
Yeah.
if you consume those highly processed foods, not only is it bad for the environment because they're also mostly packaged in a lot of single use plastic, etc., but it's also bad for your health.
Yeah.
So it ends up being that the more sustainable choices you make end up not only being good for climate and all the global issues. And sometimes it's difficult to identify with global issues. What can I do sitting here about climate change and deforestation? I'm just a person. And I mean, of course, like I mean, and I believe that there's so many amazing role models out there who do think that it's their responsibility. And of course, all of us should take it as our responsibility to
Yeah,
care about the planet. But for people who feel really disassociated with that, like what will I do? I think
yeah,
if you need to consider sustainability also for your personal good.
Mm.
Even if you can't identify with anything that people are doing, sustainability is actually good for you. So it does go beyond climate change and other global issues to also being good personally for you to live a sustainable lifestyle.
So,
yeah.
just coming back to
Good.
Jigasha's earlier question about green jobs,
Yeah.
the whole packaged food stuff, there was this huge thing about how Coca-Cola has been marketing and brainwashing everyone into thinking that it's actually good for their health, especially in China and Mexico, because
Yeah,
now there's a problem of obesity and heart problems, and they're all relating it back to Coca-Cola. So
Yeah.
marketing is also a huge industry where green jobs are going to come up because consumers want transparency. They want to know what goes into anything that they like. You can't just say that, hey, have soda pop, it's good for your health. That's
Yeah.
not how it works
yeah.
anymore. So there's going to be more like different approaches to marketing as well. Another
That's where
point.
education also comes in, right? Because you're
Yeah, the
Yeah,
getting it.
more aware all of us are, the more the brands are going to be scrutinized for what they're saying. Like
yeah.
I said, it's going beyond tokenism, because I think there's a lot of tokenism. For example, uh, just on different issues, right? Sustainability is one of them. Diversity is one of them. You put a tokenistic representation of it in marketing, and suddenly everybody buys into it. I think now you cannot fool people any longer, and so definitely conscious marketing, cause based marketing, sustainability based marketing. I
Yeah.
really like that point. I think that's going to come up a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, good point. I had actually read somewhere, I don't remember where this was, but the fact that we tend to like overwhelm ourselves by taking everything as our responsibility and then not being able to do any of it. So it just makes sense that if, like you said, if you're having meat or you're having dairy, just make sure that at least whatever you can do, just do that or start there. Like on a personal level, at least we can just
Yeah.
kind of do that. So, actually talking about that, my next question is, has the focus of sustainability actually changed people's priorities? Like that could be family planning or carbon footprint or CSR, however you want to take that. Has that actually changed people's priorities in general?
So from whatever experience or whatever conversations I've had, when it comes to more intimate matters like family planning, etc., I don't know if sustainability has reached that level where people are talking about population control, let's say, or like timing things according to like understanding the kind of world they want their children to live in. I
Yeah,
feel like people are still trying to understand the kind of love, the kind of world
you want
they themselves want to live in 10 years, 15 years down the line. Because sustainability, I hate using this word, but it's more of a millennial Gen Z thing.
yeah,
The boomers aren't very aware of it to that
yeah,
level. So, yeah, it's changing more around what you're putting inside your body, like Priya said. People are becoming more aware of that. People are becoming more aware of the individual impact they have, like they can support. There's a lot of CSR happening for companies. Some companies do it because they want to jump on the bandwagon. Some companies do it because they are genuinely interested in it. Like there's
yeah,
this company called One Tree Planted, and their whole business model is CSR. They plant one tree for, let's say, you can choose to have a purchase associated with it. You can choose to have an individual enrolled in your subscription program, and then you'll plant a tree on their behalf. So
yeah.
there are companies popping up like that who are addressing this issue, which just proves that yeah, priorities are changing, but not to a very like ground level of yeah. So family planning,
There's
etc.
hope. So we'll
Yeah,
stick
this
to
I agree with. I think like the again, like I think sustainability is more understood uh, by a younger generation for sure. But I also believe that sustainability was understood by our grandparents'
Yeah,
generation
I was actually just going to
by
bring that up.
getting older. Because
Yeah,
they understood instinctively what being sustainable and good for the environment and not wasting. I think a lot of it, you find grandparents trying to instill those values. And of course today it's called sustainability, but I feel there was
yeah.
that
It's just
thought
a way of
process.
living.
It was
Yeah,
a way of living, a more conscious slow living.
Slow
It
living,
was more
exactly.
slow living. And now the generation in the middle, I think we have sort of got that impression. I mean, we are not as good to the climate as we used to be. But
yeah,
now the upcoming generation has realized the damage that's been done. And I think it's also because it's going to be irreversible now. We are the
Yeah.
people who have to live with the impacts of climate change for the longest period of time, more than
Yeah.
our parents and grandparents. So people have awoken to that fact, and you have activists like Greta Thunberg and like, you know inspirational young people who are
Yeah.
leading that Gen Z, Gen Alpha into this. So yeah.
Cool.
Uh, Sorry, just one another
Okay.
thing. So I feel like the grandparents part that's so much more prominent in India, more than the Western
Yeah.
countries. And not to be like negative about it, but I feel like it stems a lot from the fact of waste. Like I would have my grandparents tell me, "Waste kyun kar rahe ho?" So
Yeah.
it's the whole
Right.
thing like
Right.
overconsumption and not having easy access to everything. Like you can just be like, okay, I want like 10 new t-shirts and order them off Mintra, and that's done. You're done with that. So it's overconsumption and just wastage. I feel like that's also being
Wastage.
really well addressed by our generation now.
Which we're now trying to get back to in the most convenient way possible. And businesses are like both of yours businesses are kind of working on that model. So that's actually good hope. Okay, so the last few questions, we kind of address this, but what kind of employment opportunities do you think are going to start emerging? Like, I know we've talked about it in the sense that it's going to be a lot more, but and how are companies adapting to address the climate crisis ethically to preserve the environment? So I know we talked about corporate social responsibility, but I would love if you guys gave your own personal examples as well, because I know both of you are doing something very conscious, but and it is still a business, right? It's not like a social service.
So for me specifically, when it comes to like the kind of people I would want associated with Sarom, um, I feel like it's people who ask the right questions and a lot of questions, because there are a lot of people, a lot of businesses that are still running on the older models and they want to mislead the people who are conscious about sustainability. So the jobs that would come have a lot to do with the amount of knowledge you have of the field and how much more are you willing to know while you're at work or whatever. So yeah, so I feel like that's kind of the
Yeah, that
vague.
makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
And from my perspective, the first thing that whenever we hire someone, we have this list of compulsory reading material, and a lot of that has got to do with the SDGs. Because I feel like a lot of people are coming without that knowledge as well. So for us, it's really important that they understand that the kind of enterprise that we are running, these things matter to us. And at least I guess for both of our organizations those things matter because we think like that, right? And so we
Yeah.
would want our employees to imbibe those values, that concern for global problems, and also understand that it's bigger than like their job also has a meaning, beyond that. And what I see a lot of younger people now, they're looking not only for a job in terms of just to make money. I think a lot of people are looking for meaningful jobs that contribute back to the society or are purpose driven. And
Yeah.
I think if that's the case, then yes, organizations like ours, and of course like a lot of organizations are now moving towards a more purpose driven job profile as well. So
Yeah.
having this knowledge, like like I'm saying, and Nikita's also saying, I think it's very important.
I think we have one question, which is what can we do about the fast fashion industry that's generating so much waste? I know we touched on this, but it is actually quite in depth. So if any of you want to answer that.
uh, I can take that one.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, like I mentioned, there are a lot of companies that are working on an upcycled model where like there's this company called Doodleage where they take surplus fabric and they make new designs out of that. So they don't manufacture any fabric of their own. And when it comes to like pre-made clothes that the fast fashion industry discards in countries like Africa and India, there's a huge plant in Panipat which takes all of these thrown away clothes, they shred it, and then they make blankets out of it. All the blankets you used to get in trains and all, they were all made out of recycled and like discarded clothes. So that's one thing. And the other thing, the biggest thing is having the fast fashion industry recognize that, listen, we're not going to fall for your marketing trap and we're not going to overconsume, because if something is not manufactured, then it's not going to add up in the landfill. Like there's only so much you can do of the waste that's generated. You need to stop the production cycle somewhere. Like Zara releases about 32 seasons a year, that 32 seasons of clothing a year, to have this like exclusivity that if you don't buy it right now, it'll be gone the next time you're in store. So a lot of it, a lot of the responsibility falls on the buyers, on the consumers themselves as well, that we're not going to fund this stuff that you're doing, so stop, basically.
Yeah, I think also this, I was just reflecting on what you were saying, Nikita. I feel like at this point, sustainability in fashion is also at a point where it might not be accessible to everyone. And probably because of the price points of a lot of
Points.
sustainably made clothing, it might prompt people to go for the fast fashion, cheap, very cheap alternatives. Same thing happens in health and food as well. When
Yeah.
something is organic, it's just higher priced and it's less accessible than something that is processed because it's the cheapest thing to buy. So I
A
think there
donut is
should
cheaper
be,
than an apple.
sorry.
A donut is cheaper than an apple.
Exactly, right? And right. So unfortunately, that's the case. So we need to bridge the accessibility gap. And I would really love it if the sustainable fashion can be made accessible to everyone, so that we also stop buying the fast fashion. And so
Yeah.
that's because fast fashion, I think the major pull for fast fashion is the cheap pricing that they have and the marketing that you said, Nikita, about that. But as well as but I would like to say, for the person asking this question, that it's a personal choice as well, right? If the consumer doesn't want to consume fast fashion anymore and demands the higher standards, companies will have to comply. So I think also there can be a reverse consumer pressure on these companies as well. So if we can generate more of a movement on people s- demanding that these companies stop doing what they're doing. 32 seasons for Zara, it's just insane for me to even think about it. I
Yeah.
mean, I think people like you and me can actually put reverse pressure. So maybe start personally as well, and of course for the brands and companies, if they can make it more accessible, I think we can come to a midpoint possibly.
Yeah, I think this is the same thing that had happened with animal cruelty a few years ago. I don't even know how long it's been, but
Right.
when people weren't aware and they started getting aware, and then the consumers put in pressure, and that's why now most brands have stopped.
Yeah.
Most of them have stopped. We still
Excluding
have.
Mac, they still test on animals.
I know. I was that. I didn't want to take a name, but Max still does.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you see the same thing, the price point of something like Body Shop or some other brand is which is organic will end up being actually like this guy. Like in India, we've got so many more cosmetic brands which are doing sustainable or at least organic, formulations, and they end up being the same price point. But because there is still a status attached to something like Mac or Zara, they still end up going there, and that is probably something that consumers also need to shift. It can't just be about putting that pressure. They also need to understand that if a new brand is coming up, like you said, if some brand is making new fashion, then also that label needs to get famous, and when it gets famous, it's too expensive. So probably that balance is something that will come
Yeah.
in a few
It has to
years,
come.
but it needs to, right?
But
Right.
But yeah, very interesting.
competing with like companies like Sheen, where it's impossible to
But
compete with a company like Sheen, and
Yeah.
it baffles me that people still buy from there. They know, the consumers know that they buy one top, they wear it once, and it's done. That's it. But it's still working, and then they're still making money. So in these cases where consumer pressure is the only option left.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's why I think awareness and education needs to come in, right? So, okay, cool. And the next question, we have another 10 minutes to go, so we don't have a lot of questions. But if you guys want to pick anything in between, let me know, and we can focus on that as well. But my next question is policies that are in place. Policies are somewhere in place, but our behavior is still kind of the same. Like I know we talked about consumer pressure, but so, what do you think is holding humanity back to change their fundamental habits and not become sustainable? Again, I also don't like using this word sustainable, but you know what I mean. Like more conscious living.
So like Priya mentioned, Greta Thunberg, who's like a young activist. Yes, she's making a huge impact on the entire world, on the way people think, but she attacks bigger issues, which on an individual level, like you can't
Seem,
associate with them. So then I feel like a lot of people feel like sustainability is just this overarching thing, like what impact am I going to have? So one of the biggest ways to change the individual behavior is to break down these big numbers of like this is actually true that one vegan meal can save 1100 gallons of water. So if like things that were more easy to do, and again people were reminded that you don't have to completely like just give up all of the luxuries of modern life to be a sustainable human being. You can start with something as small as switching to a menstrual cup. That
Yeah.
saves, that just like makes such an impact on waste. Or like if you prolong the life of your clothes by 9 months, you're offsetting your carbon footprint by 20%. So little
Yeah.
little things like that need to be talked about more. They need to be given more of a platform that hey, you can literally have one vegan meal and save water. You're doing your part. So that's what's eventually going to, I feel like, create a change in the behavior of people.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like, so honestly, I don't feel like policies are in place. I want to sort of touch more upon that because if
Yeah.
policies were in place, like what Greta Thunberg says, right? Like, we would be treating it more like an emergency, which it's
We
not
would.
being
Yeah.
treated like.
Yeah.
So, I really like what she said recently. She said that, if so it's not like we don't know how to treat an issue like an emergency. We treated the pandemic like an emergency, right? So we know how to treat things like an emergency. It's just that these policies really need to go over the lobbying and the red tape and stuff that is out there by these organizations, and go beyond that to actually make crackdown on some of these things. For example, from a health perspective, I'll tell you, sugar, for example, the sugar industry, right? There is so much sugar. Like this happened with the tobacco industry. So there was a point in the world where
Yeah.
everybody used to smoke. Like it was, smoking was allowed everywhere, anywhere, on planes, in theaters. It was like a proper thing, until we realized, oh god, most of the world is developing lung cancer. It's a public health hazard. And then
Yeah.
suddenly a crackdown, there was policy, the prices increased. And now the same thing is happening with sugar. There is so much sugar that's pumped into everything, hidden ingredients, we don't know what we're eating. There's an obesity epidemic, there's cancer, there's diabetes. And so I feel like even with some of these issues, there need to be more stricter policies. I think
Yeah.
governments always wait till the end where things get so bad that they can't be ignored. But why get to that point when you can actually have some of these policies? Like, because I feel like policy has a huge role in mindset, cultural mindset. Right? If I have a Hershey's kind of company spending $50 billion on marketing every year, or Coca Cola's marketing budget is like insane, versus a health brand who's spending absolutely nothing, or what can small farmers spend on marketing, so a
Yeah.
lot of these shifts have to happen through policy and government. So I believe that there's a long way to go from a policy perspective as well. And then from a personal perspective, like what Nikita is saying, there are a lot of things we can do, but governments can really help subsidize a lot of the changes that need to be made, because right now subsidies are given to things that should possibly not be
No.
subsidized. So I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of policy change is still to be done, according to me. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Actually, I have one question which is completely off the grid, but since both of you are running businesses and I used to as well, I think the biggest, how do you ensure that because you're going towards this, because the mindset as a founder that you're doing is to reduce consumerism and direct it towards the right kind or the right base of consumerism, how do you then ensure that a business is still profitable or it's still then able to employ the right people with the right wages? Because somewhere it's going to take a hit. So how do you balance that individually?
I don't
uh,
think, okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
No, I don't think there's a trade-off personally. So, first of all, I believe that, because I think our spaces are very different, so I can just talk from my space. I believe that the biggest success that sustainability can have is when people stop looking at it like a social enterprise.
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
it's like just a normal business and you treat it like a business. Because, see, at the end of the day, everything needs to be, there needs to be a market driven, successful model for sustainable products to become commonplace. You
Common.
know,
Yeah.
the fact that fast fashion or anything else is so successful is because they've managed to understand the consumer need, match it at the right price, give the right value, and all of those things, right? So why can't sustainable or more socially conscious businesses offer the same thing? It's just that right now, I believe that that is where we need to be. Like I said, making anything that's socially conscious or things that we make more accessible and affordable for everyone, that is
Yeah.
where it's going to be. And I don't think that there is, at least from a healthcare perspective, the industry that I'm from, there needs to be a huge trade-off for
Yeah.
me, that you can't have a profitable company which is also socially conscious and sustainable. I don't believe that, because I feel if we as entrepreneurs believe that, then we probably would have started an NGO, like I'm sure we also believe that the business will be successful at some point, right? So I do believe that sustainable businesses can be successful, can be profitable. So I
And the prices can go down eventually of things while
definitely,
that's happening.
definitely. So I think there's a lot of, at this golden point, there is a lot of investment in sustainability, because
So yeah.
somebody needs to invest to make a cultural shift. No
Yeah.
cultural shift has happened without a lot of investment, right? So I think
Yeah.
that is, with all that investment coming in, we'll be able to slowly drive down prices and also make it more accessible.
Fair enough. Yeah,
So,
that's good.
but yeah, that's definitely a challenge, like profit margins, etc. But at the same time, there are companies who have like a very high price point and they're still not sustainable. So basically, just having the approach of like not being categorized as a social enterprise and being looked at like a business, I feel like people will take it more seriously. And basically, you need to show the consumers that hey, you're getting the same thing plus maybe a better quality. When it comes to me, a better fabric that's not only better for the environment but also your skin. Like you're literally never going to get a rash if you wear this. So it just needs to be communicated in a way which attracts the right kind of people, that there are the right kind of people for for every company. There is a
Yeah.
permanent client base that is going to make the company run. Like I think that's there for all sorts of all sectors. There is one sector, one clientele that makes it run, keeps it running, and then there's a new clientele in which you can like experiment on, etc. So to form the base, there are people that exist. They just need to have the right access and the right communication with the business.
Perfect. Awesome. That was actually a question I've always wanted to ask every entrepreneur I meet. So that was a bit personal. But last question I'm going to pick up and then we'll close is there any way to teach young children to incorporate sustainability to their everyday lives?
Uh, I saw this like quote recently that children don't watch, they absorb.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the best way to teach them. Like let's say that you are practicing sustainability in your home. You can have like a compost system or something even smaller than that, just less food waste just in your own kitchen. That's what children are going to grow up learning. Tell them that it's not okay to leave food in their plates and that you shouldn't serve yourself more than you want. That's a very small thing that was taught to us by like our grandparents, etc., where it was looked down upon when you wasted food.
Yeah.
So I feel like just making children understand that, and then making them understand that there is so much hard work that goes behind every single thing that's going on in their lives, whether that's a light bulb or like grains. It takes a lot of effort. So if they just appreciate it and recognize it, I feel like that's going to drive a major shift.
I completely agree, and also I feel like being an organization that works with schools and kids a lot, I do believe that. Uh, by the way, children are already really aware. They are really aware on their
True.
own, because they're
Yeah,
consuming a lot of
yeah,
social
we pick
media. Yeah, they're consuming a lot of things online, and it's all about sustainability. At least for the younger generation, they're consuming that content. But if it's also formalized and put into the school system, or they see adult figures around them embodying that, and I don't think that every parent or every household around the world can suddenly change, but definitely in institutions like schools, workplaces, if they see all these things happening and becoming mandated, I think, like Nikita was saying, they'll absorb and start embodying some of these changes.
they'll in fact take it back home.
They'll take it back home, because I
Yeah.
also believe that, today it's going to be a reverse pressure. The younger generation is going to teach the older generation, or we are going to teach our parents, and
Yeah.
it's going to be reverse. It's not going to be like our parents are the role models here and they teach us. We'll have to reverse teach in our households, we are the ones who have to make the change. So it's going to
Yeah,
be something like that. Yeah.
I don't know if you have experienced or noticed this, Priya, but I've noticed my parents becoming so much more aware because I'm in this field. They
Yeah,
know so much about fab, and they have kind of become conscious consumers themselves because of the
Mm.
amount I talk about it. So,
it's the
yeah,
same, same.
I agree with this.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, awesome. So we're all on the same page with that. Cool. Thank you so much. We're out of time, so I would
Thank
have loved
you.
to like continue this conversation, but thank you so much. It's so nice to see one women and second younger generation doing something so cool. So I'm so happy that we're doing this. This will be recorded for people to watch later, so we'll send you links of that later.
thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you
Thank
so much for your
you.
time. Bye. See you
Thank
soon.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.